Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This is the month of May, and in May, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Names hold a lot of value. It personalizes the individual. You're not generic human one. You're actually a person. A lot of times when we personalize situations, personalize people, we kind of remember better. Names can conjure both fond and unpleasant memories in our lives. This month, we are recognizing Mental Health Awareness Month, and all that may include the good, the bad, the messy. And here to share and kind of help me through this is Mike. You're returning guest. You've been here before. Mental health is kind of what we're very familiar with, and I just want to say thank you for coming and sharing your insight with us.
Glad to be here.
So I like to always say, I don't reinvent the wheel, but I encourage those who are out there, find what resources may be helpful. In the U.S., it's 988, the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. And wherever neck of the woods, wherever part of the world you're from, find what resource may help you. And I'll just start here. I always say things that people say better. One thing when I think about mental health is some of the celebrities that are not here anymore. One being Robin Williams. He completed suicide several years back, and he said this quote, which was kind of haunting, Mike. And I want to hear what your take on it is. I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people who make you feel alone. What comes to mind, and how do you think this correlates, or how do you read this quote?
Well, I think it's interesting because it shows like a perspective of what is versus what is perceived. Because you could actually be alone and not realize it until further down the road.
Yeah.
If people make you feel like you're alone or you're isolated, that puts more stress and does more damage because they're reinforcing a negative stereotype. So, feelings are important to a certain degree, but we have to remember like reality versus perception.
Yeah.
And that could be the key to saving not only your life, but others as well.
And piggybacking on that, I do find, working in the mental health field, but also in my own personal life, defining things matter. Defining what things are, and sometimes our expectations are not our own. I know that sounds weird to say, but a lot of times I find our needs, our wants are outsourced. It's very much, there's so much stuff out there, Mike. You go on anywhere, everyone's telling you what you need to be, who you need to be, why you need to be. And I feel that it can be problematic when you think about mental health. It's, the old monage, the old kind of saying in the military was hurry up and wait. In the mental health field, it's like that, especially in the beginning when you're trying to get your medication in place, get stabilized. There's a lot of waiting. And, I think there's also maybe a moment or maybe a time if you're able to self-reflect of what your needs and wants are at the given moment, but that in itself changes. So what along this train of thought, how do you feel about when we're still talking about Robin Williams' quote, but perception and feelings, put them in their place. We don't do well when we're driven by our feelings, but we can't ignore what our feelings are telling us. So it's two different kind of ways of thinking. What anything else you want to add to that when you're thinking about how you navigate when we're talking, tribute to mental health? Anything you want to add to this thought?
Well, I just want to add, when people talk about perceptions versus feelings, they believe that one has to be vastly more than the other. But if I was to put a percentage on feelings versus, logic, it would be 51-49. And either way, it doesn't matter if you're 51-49 logic over feelings or 51-49 feelings over logic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get that balance or close to it,
Mm-hmm.
it'll really help you put things into perspective, because nothing will ever reach 50-50 and
Mm-mm.
stay there.
Mm-mm.
Things go up, things go down. You have good days and you have bad days. But if you could stay in that 51-49 range,
Mm-hmm.
that means you're not overextending to either one, and you have that harmony, and you could always recalibrate that harmony for when you need it.
Yes, and I, I, I truly agree with that, because it really comes from you. It comes from you starting the process. I mentioned the outsourcing, not to poke, not to say that a lot of us, what we see out there, we're influenced, whether we like it or not. It's how we respond to it that matters. From my experience, however, maintaining sustained change in someone's life starts with an individual. I can tell you, Mike, you should do this. Someone can tell me eat broccoli, I should go do this and that. Unless I want to do it, unless I really want to make those changes, and it's something individualized for me, it won't really stick. Or from my experience, and why are we talking about this? Mental health is so intangible. You don't see sometimes whether it's working or not, whether the medication's working or not, whether what you're trying is working or not. And for me, that's where this kind of gray area, I think, is very important. Michael, I want to ask you, from your experience, what have you seen been helpful working with and through difficult moments in your life when it got in regards to mental health, and what did not help as much?
Well, I think people want to either fix things
Mm-hmm.
or to have the perception that everything's normal or fine or everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we hear in the field, sometimes you have to accept that it's okay to not be okay sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't always, be everything can't always be good, just
No.
like everything can't always be bad.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole thing, like I said, is I'm about the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that things come in ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
And when they ebb and they flow, you could be having a really, really good streak. The next thing you know, you're down for a while.
Yeah.
But you can't hyper focus on that,
Mm-hmm.
because with the good comes the bad. Just like you need night and day, you need light and dark. You need that. I say this a lot, but you need that balance. So you need that harmony, because without the harmony, if you have too much good, that could be just as bad as having nothing but bad.
Yeah, I could see that, because in reality, um, what I've learned most was when I was having most difficult time in my life, Mike. I learned more things when I was really struggling, not the times. And if we're sometimes we could become complacent when things are seemingly going well. And you mentioned in the beginning of this, when you're mentioning your experience, that there are people who are fix-it people, and there's people who just want to say everything's okay. Albert Einstein talks about the people who want to say everything's okay. The world is a dangerous place, not because of who are evil, but because those who look on and do nothing. We talk about mental health, and it is messy, and it's not to cast blame, but actually, it doesn't go well when you say shame, shame, shame for you not doing this, because at the end of the day, it's all of us understanding a little bit more. You mentioned, well, at least we kind of been mentioning, generalizing mental health doesn't work. If I say, oh, this is personalized, and that's why when I was thinking about this month, remembering our names is very personal, and you can't avoid, like, you're Mike, I'm Robert, and I feel it adds value. Sometimes in mental health, there seems like there's a devaluing of someone who is struggling. And I feel when it comes to mental health, we have to remember the individual, not the illness. We have to remember that person is a person just like you and me, Some may be struggling, but every day is not a crisis situation. You know, not every day. You know, you can have fun, you could have hobbies, you can have a life. But mental health, like I said, Robin Williams, unfortunately, in his quote mentions this. But mental health can be overwhelming and also lonely for those going through it. You know, I could easily say, you know, especially from my experience, look back like, oh, you should know this. But if I really think about when I was really struggling, when I was going through all the process, um, we forget a lot. There's a month for us to remember mental health. We may be doing well, but there's people who are just getting into it, people who are just getting diagnosed, people who are just navigating families in the same run. I want to ask you, when you're no, I want to pause right here. What are your thoughts of what we've been talking about? Anything you want to add before we keep going?
Well, since it's Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to mention, NAMI, or the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and encourage your viewers, for those of who don't know about it, just go up and Google NAMI's Principles of Support. Because, a lot of people, they like when you have, steps or, things that you could turn to in an ordered fashion. And in those principles of support, we have things like number 7, which is we will not judge anyone's pain as less than our own. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, they think when they're going through things, it's the worst thing and nobody's ever been through anything as worse as them. Mm-hmm. Or you mentioned earlier, which was number 1, we will see the individual first and not the illness. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. Then I like number 2. I'll just give a couple of these 3 couple. Number 3 would be principle number 2, which is we recognize that mental illnesses are medical illnesses. Mm-hmm. And they may, have environmental triggers. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, a lot of people, when things are seemingly going good, or they're not used to dealing with people or the subject of mental illnesses, they don't look at it as medical illnesses. Mm-hmm. And they just think, oh, it's all in your head. Mm-hmm. But, we don't tell people that have like cancer, it's all in your head. No. Or people that have other things, that's wrong with them medically, that there's nothing wrong. And sometimes we have to remember that mental illness falls under that. It is something that we all either have faced or have the possibility of facing in the future.
Yeah. And I think when we see the individual and when we see that mental illness is an illness, it's a medical illness, then we will, I think people will be more cautioned today to make fun of someone with cancer, someone who's a child who has, going through chemo. Now granted, the circumstance is different, but when someone wants to end their life because everything in their life is painful and they just want a relief, I dare someone to say that is just going to be a phase. I would say, remember that person's name when you're saying that is just a phase. They'll just get over it. It's in your head, because it's not. I think names sometimes bring a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what to do. And, there's a lot of education, like Mike would say, out there that we can know. And granted, there's things that may help, resources that may be helpful, but just like anything in the medical field, if you don't know or don't like something, or you want more care, you need a higher level of care, you get a second opinion. You start doing the research for yourself, because you know why? Because the person's name matters, whoever that is. It's your son, your daughter, your wife, whoever it is. So consequently, a lot of times, unfortunately, we're reminded of this month because there's so much information out there that we sometimes forget. It would be nice, I would think. It sounds funny to say that. It would be nice if we didn't need to remind ourselves of much like this. We just know, we're just reminded each day that each person has a value. Whether they have mental illness, whether they have leukemia, whether they have anything, we don't have to be reminded that treating people decently is fosters a community that accepts. And one thing that I feel the three hardest words to say, Mike, and maybe you could concur, is I need help. In the mental health field, that is the hardest. Not I am sad. That you hear that a lot, or my life sucks, or whatever. It's I need help. And for me, when we foster an environment that accepts people who have mental illness, it may be that bridge that may be helpful. I'm going to share a quote, and I want to hear what your thoughts about it. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Lao Tzu. He's, very. What do you think about this quote? I know we're shifting here, but I think it's taking the time of self-reflection. Sometimes we have all this baggage on this diagnosis, that diagnosis, but what will help you? What can you? And we sometimes limit ourselves. So, what do you think of this quote? Briefly.
Well, I like this quote, and what a lot of people don't realize is Lao Tzu was a philosopher in the Chinese philosophy that really focused on Taoism or Taoism in some places, and that is not just a religion, but it's a philosophy and a school of thought. And within all of its parameters, it always focused on maintaining balance and harmony. And so it would have things, and this particular quote where it says, when I let go of what I am. So some people are proud of what they are. Like, because I am a doctor, that makes me the person I am. Because I am a lawyer, that makes me the person I am. Or, they let things define them by either their status or their wealth or things of that nature. But if something was to happen, they lose it all, then that's when they go to the part of where they become what I might be. Because they didn't intend to become that, but circumstances happen. And even if, like, let's say you lose it all, you hit rock bottom, and you think this is what I might have been or have become, but I could build back up. I could regain everything. So you could become what you were again, or become something that you want to be. So it goes either way.
Yeah.
You could either become greater or return back to what you were, but you have to realize that there are many possibilities of what you might have been.
Yeah. And I think sometimes those can be distractions of what you may have been. But at the same, I would say, just like in the beginning, I'm trying to reflect on our conversation just briefly. I just remember me saying that, Albert, that a lot of times we outsource, we outsource what our needs, wants, and what we could have been. But a lot of times there's so much urgency. But a lot of times I ask people, whether I'm working with in the mental health field or even myself or people, my friends or whatever, it's like, what do you want to do? A lot of times you don't ever get in the picture. It's like, well, no is a valid answer. If you don't want to do something, no is a valid answer. If you're able to see yourself as more valuable, like if you have a mental illness, I guess what I want to say, and I'm going to ask you, because this is a question right under this, what I like people to remember is that mental health doesn't devalue you. You're just going through something. It may be tough right now, but I would say take the time, to find out what will help you, what we want to do. If you want to do underwater basket weaving, do it. As long as it's positive, I would encourage. Hobbies are a big thing that I feel is a good indicator that I would like people to explore. Every day can't be such a oh, I need to improve myself, improve myself. We're human, you know. We're human. Sometimes we can't, and we have those days where like, yeah, not gonna happen. But I would say I would like people to remember they were a name before they had mental health. They were a person before these problems set on. Don't forget that person. You know, and I also I challenge the community to not forget these people. What would you like people to remember when it comes to Mental Health Awareness Month, Mike?
I want people to remember that it could happen to them and it could happen at any time. Because a lot of people, we have the month, they focus on it, and then after the month, if they don't face it in their personal lives
Mm-hmm.
or with somebody that they're close to, they sort of forget about it or put it out of their mind. It's just like, I'll give you a good example in the faith community. The people that go to church only on holidays, like
Yeah,
an
yeah.
Easter or a Christmas or or
Mm-hmm.
Passover or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they, at nine times out of 10 during the year, they're not thinking about their spirituality or helping others or doing what's right. But on those certain days, they're reminded.
Yeah.
And while it's good that they get the reminder, they need to realize that you know it's not just limited to certain times or to certain instances, if or it's not limited to when it becomes a crisis.
I totally agree. When we limit ourselves, when we do something, you mentioned those seasonal church members who go and those high peak. Well, you also, I would say, when it comes to this topic of you know how we connect with one another. I would say Mental Health Awareness Month. How I think when we strip away all the titles of what I could have been, who I am, we begin to see the person, and I feel um, yes, it could happen to you, but I think Coletta King Jr., the relative to Martin Luther King. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the quote in front of me. She said, "The how you can see how a community is how they treat their people. How do we treat each other? I don't need to have cancer to treat someone decently who has cancer. I don't need to be experience everything that is heart wrenching to understand that that must have been hard. I think when it comes to mental health and just like you were saying, it's easy to generalize. It's easy to be distant. It's easy to forget their names. It's easy to say this is what they didn't do this because they should have done this. But all those should haves don't bring those people back. All those should haves don't provide more resources for people who need, who are underinsured. All those should haves don't bring back relatives who didn't get the help they needed. All those should haves don't do that. So reminding us, at least piggybacking, well, pushing it forward, mental health awareness shows us that we need to do more. And we need to do more because as a community of people, each one of us deserve that. And I wholeheartedly believe that because I didn't choose to have mental illness. I'm sure other people who had struggled in their lives don't choose it. And I think that is what I would like people to remember this year is that, yeah, everyone could have it, but even if you don't have it, doesn't mean you can't remember those people who do. Um, um, the theme, I'm going to ask you this, Mike, and we're going to get to your final thoughts. And I know you're going to have a few things to share with us today. Remembering our names. What comes to mind? I know we've kind of been hitting on it a lot, but any last little things you want to add to this?
I want people to realize that if you know anything is possible, but not everything is probable.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the quote that says, "It's easy to do what's right when the spotlight is on you.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to maintain that when no one is looking."
Yeah.
And the reason why I said previously anything is possible, but not everything is probable, is because there are going to be times where, some people don't understand, the situation because they are blessed for it
Mm-hmm.
not to have happened to them. So they
Yeah.
may forget about the people that do have the day-to-day struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're doing it out of malice. It's just the spotlight is not on them.
Yeah.
And when that spotlight is not on you, that's when your true character comes out.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be a good person, not just when people are looking at you and praising you for being a good person,
Yeah.
but you want it to be a genuine thing.
Yeah, I feel like I almost forgot when you mentioned those church members that come seasonally. And a lot of times they come back because of guilt or shame or whatever. I'm not saying everyone. Uh, there's like attrition, forced attrition. The idea that I feel bad. I don't want to be. It's fear based. Like I don't want to look bad for being mean or being rude or I have to do this because I would venture to ask yourself why. If we're really being honest, we're human. We like I myself can be selfish just like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is prioritizing why you do what you do, and also just understanding that the spotlight is not always on you, but what you do, like Mike is saying, what you do when the spotlight is not in you really defines who you are, because you're not gaining any recognition. You're doing it because it matters. And I feel that in itself shows character. If your whole response to being caring for the mentally ill is because you get high fives and recognition, I feel it misses the mark for me. It really has to be something that you yourself have developed. And if you can't do something, we're human. Be honest with yourself. I cannot do all this stuff, but we also can treat each other decently at the very least. I want to ask you, Mike, and give you a little opportunity to share a little bit what you've been up to. What any final thoughts you want to share with those listening, and to share what you've been up to? Go ahead.
Well, my final thoughts is this. Names have power, and we've mentioned this a number of times in this discussion. The power of personalizing something, because if you're just number 649, that's different than being called Robert.
Yeah.
It is you get a certain not just pleasure, but you get a certain and not you get a fulfillment.
Yeah.
And you get that sense of value.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why remembering our names is a good title, and it's something that we need to think about, not just during the month of May or September or October, which are some of the other months where we do mental health things, but just try to think about it, to remind yourself to be good to not only yourself but to other people as a routine thing or an everyday thing.
Yeah. I just want to, before you share, I also want to say, when I think about names, I think about when people are about to have a child. How much emphasis is that? Like, oh, what are you going to name him? It's a boy, this, girl, that. There's so much excitement in a name. It's so personal, so individual. And like, I do Appreciate you recognizing. I thought put a lot of thought into what this month should what spoke to me. I think remember our day, remembering our the names really do matter. I think it's when you put a number, you don't really know. If you say, "Oh, this person in Washington D.C. Completed suicide," until you know the person, the name. If you know the individual, that's when it really sinks in. Mike, I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit what you've been up to and anything you want to share with those listening. So go ahead.
Well, I started my own peer support network, and what I try to do is to try to help peers or consumers to learn and build helpful and strong support networks. That's my goal, and that's what I've been doing. The name of my peer support network is the Northern Star Peer Support Network. My website is northernpeernetwork.com. And I also have a blog that I write called Mike's Tales. And it's the address you put in is blacksun30 home or no .blog.home. And it's a WordPress blog that comes up where I try to touch on subjects and different things, but do it in bite-sized chunks. So it's just little quick takes that you may find encouraging or may give you some food for thought. Some people will agree, some people will disagree, but my goal is to help people to have the information so they can make an informed decision that is right for them. And I want to, help break the stigma of mental health. That is my goal, and that is my you could say calling or purpose. And I'd like to thank Robert for inviting me here today, and I hope everybody is able to learn something from it and really get something out of it.
And those who are listening, I just want to share that the links to those websites, the blog will be clickable just below. If you look at the notes, you'll be able to click there, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on Anchor or whatever platform, you'll be able to see in the notes where you could actually find more information on what Mike is sharing. Thank you so much, Mike, for just joining us. Every time I think about mental health, I'm like, I gotta get Mike back on here. So thank you so much for coming on. I just want to give remember to stay updated with Revive Ministries, the various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries, leaving with this last quote. It's from Brené Brown. It says, "Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weak."